Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our organic, free-range, farm-fresh cancer show, now with 50% more COVID, at least.
Yay!
Take a guess at who has COVID.
This guy! I finally got it.
You know, that's still not as bad as cancer, though, if that's what you're going for.
You are right as rain, as your mom would say.
Yeah, but my health isn't.
You still have the cancer then, I imagine.
Yeah, still have it here.
Well, let's first address the very, very cool hat you have.
Indeed, as you can see, I have a hat right here that says "Having a Ball" on it. Good friend of mine had it made for me by hand, and it took a 5-hour train ride to give it to me.
Wow.
Well, 2.5 hours here, 2.5 hours back. Only got to see me for about 10 minutes because, as people might guess, I'm in a hospital right now.
So that's the whole blue screen thing.
Well, yeah, if I opened the curtain, you'd see the Alps behind me, but then you probably wouldn't see me. So you can always maybe add them onto the blue screen in post.
Also, we don't have copyright for the Alps, so you might as well just have a blue curtain instead.
This is true. Anyway, everybody, thanks for being back to watch us, listen to us. For this, second episode of the second season.
It's 2-2, yeah. And we said in the first episode that the second season would be more dramatic. And then I was like, we need an angle for episode 2 of season 2. Let's get COVID, shall we?
Exactly. And also, because I don't know if people remember, last episode we did, it was exactly 2 weeks ago today. It was the day after I was out of the hospital for my lung operation.
Yes.
I was doing pretty good, and I'm back in the hospital now, which was unexpected, and we'll sort of get to why a little bit later.
Well, that was revealing.
Well, I mean, it's quite a long story. And also, it might not look like I'm in a hospital because I don't have my hospital gown on. I decided to dress up for people today.
Are you eating enough?
I'm eating enough. I don't know. Since I use no energy at all every day, I don't feel the need to eat a ton.
Interesting.
I'm basically right here. There's a hospital bed right next to me. And I spend about 23 hours a day sitting in it, lying in it, doing nothing.
So you're not encouraged to walk around or...
I am, kind of, but another spoiler alert, I might have COVID too, so I'm not allowed out of my room.
Yay! We've got the COVID. Nice.
That sounded like you were singing, what's his name? We've got the COVID. We've got the COVID. Who's got the COVID?
Yes. I mean, it's a weird disease. I'm pretty sure most people have heard of it. It's this thing going around.
But so you have it. How are you feeling?
It's been a weird week. It's been quite similar to the rest of the last 2 years in terms of staying indoors, doing nothing. Well, I've worked constantly, but it's been a lot of weird... what's the word?
Symptoms?
Symptoms. There's been a lot of weird symptoms just turning on and off. Like all of a sudden you have a fever for 2 hours and you're near death. And then right after that you're like, hey, let's get cracking. And then I've had sort of ache in my joints and my muscles, or what other people might refer to as muscles. It's compact fat. So I've felt like an old man this week.
Yeah, it's funny because you don't look like an old man. You look like a cat burglar.
I'm constantly dressed in this gangster getup because I get cold easily this week. I'm an old man dying from a young virus. That's no. I only have 1 day left of isolation, and then I'll be ready to go out and explore the world.
That sounds good. And then spread the COVID.
I actually, this is not a joke, and I might put myself in legal trouble right now, but the second day after I got COVID, my dad showed up at the door, and I was like, you're not supposed to be here. And he's like, cough on me. And I was like, what? And he's like, I want the disease, goddammit, give it to me now. And then I actually coughed on him, and I didn't manage to give him COVID.
But I mean, because your dad's a doctor. He didn't want you to give him COVID because he's anti-vax, did he?
No, he's taken two shots. So the second gave him what's it called, a brain aneurysm, stroke kind of thing, which left him partially blind. But that's the only way it affected him. So there's a silver lining somewhere. He just can't see it.
I guess at least you didn't kill your dad.
That's true. But he doesn't want to take jab number 3 because he doesn't want to die. Because apparently he was very close to dying from number 2. But he really wants the disease. And he wanted me to give it to him. And I was like, I'm not entirely comfortable with that. Especially if you die. And his only response was, well, you'll inherit everything. And I was like, for fuck's sake.
So like the production values for this show could go way up, potentially.
Yes. He has said the words, I think I'm made out of Teflon. Because he's really tried to get the disease and he just can't catch a break or a COVID. So,
Damn.
But you might have COVID. That's why you're isolated in a blue room. How did you potentially get it?
We'll get to that in a bit because it's a long story to how I got to now.
Excuse me, I thought we started recording already.
We did, but let's try and do things in order because so many things have happened in the last 2 weeks that it's going to get confusing if I start from the end and go backwards and make this into a Christopher Nolan episode or something.
All right, in this episode of Memento, the sequel, we'll start at the beginning. I have to warn you, it might be a longer episode than usual because everything and anything has happened to this young chap with the ball. And it's dramatic. It's been really dramatic. So buckle up, pop some popcorn, put on your 3D glasses, and tune in. How you doing, Joe?
Well, right now, pretty good. But on the same thing, I said the same thing last time we spoke, exactly 2 weeks ago. I was doing pretty good. We recorded that on a Sunday morning. Then I went out and had coffee on a nice terrace in the sun with some friends, spent some time at my place, went out to see a brilliant movie, Licorice Pizza, then went home. I was sleeping at my parents' house for a couple of days. Went back to their place, 11 o'clock at night, felt more or less fine, went to bed. Then half an hour later, I had like a frog in my throat, which, funny enough, frog in my throat.
P.T. Anderson.
Exactly, by P.T. Anderson. Magnolia has frogs coming from the sky. So, yeah, okay, that was my forced reference of the day.
I enjoyed it.
You're probably the only person. But anyway, I had this frog in my throat, so you want to cough. Thing is, I also had a hole in the side of my chest here.
Yeah, the hole from the operation.
Exactly, the hole, which wasn't that big, but there was a hole bandaged up. And when you cough, it hurts there. So I was holding it down, trying to make as little movement as possible, coughing. But this frog in my throat turned into sort of a coughing fit, and I just couldn't stop coughing. At the same time, feeling pain here and like literally juice coming out under the bandage. The bandage sort of slowly forming a pocket of liquid. Joe juice, a Jojito, if you'd like.
A Joe on the beach.
Something like that. Yeah, Joe's Metropolitan.
Always a winner.
And so started coughing. Really could not stop. And
Ironically, but yeah, sorry. COVID.
That's a very good illustration of what happened. And I think it somehow turned into a sort of panic attack-like thing. Not that I really had any, but it must have been that, because I just could not calm down, could not get my breathing down. My parents, I woke them up because they could hear me sort of coughing and yelping and half crying and feeling pretty shitty about myself. And they obviously wanted to help. There wasn't that much they could do, and I was, I guess, not myself, let's say, because I wasn't very nice to them. I sort of told them to get out of the room, leave me alone, it'll be much easier to deal with than myself, which they ended up doing, even though I'm pretty sure they felt bad about leaving me alone, literally in a ball on the floor trying to stop my coughing. So I couldn't really talk, but I could use my phone. I texted a few nurse friends and a doctor friend who gave me some tips about trying to calm down, not to worry too much about the thing on my side, which ended up like bursting. And it was literally like 3 decis of yellowish, not so appetizing cocktail juice that came out. And I did manage after a while to calm down. It also helped that since you're always awake, you also responded with some memes and jokes and sort of made me think of something else.
That's my job.
So then after this probably lasted about an hour and a half. And then I managed to patch myself up again, get back to sleep. Felt pretty good. I mean, pretty good, I guess. At least I managed to sleep. I woke up the next morning and I was kind of worried about my wound, which even though I'd patched it up, everything had spewed out of it. I sweat a lot during the night over it. And so I was thinking, I've got to get this looked at. So obviously, like going to the emergency room or getting a doctor's appointment can take a little bit of time. So I instead decided just to get a drive down rather, to the oncology ward, where I did all my chemo last year. Because I figured, well, everybody knows me there. During the chemo, they said, if there's any problems, come on over. We'll see what we can do. So I went down and explained my story, and they said, oh, no problem. We'll wait a few minutes. We'll take care of you. And then I literally had like the 5 nurses all looking at my wound, trying to decide what would be the best way to patch it up. Should we do this? Should we, what's needed? Then they got the expert nurse, one of them who was apparently really the scar expert. She came, they spent about 10 minutes doing a great job of bandaging it up. Then another nurse came back and said, I actually called the thoracic surgeon in the hospital, which was right next door to where I was, and managed to fit me in between 2 of his patients because she thought maybe I actually needed 1 extra stitch. So I was able to go see a doctor like 20 minutes after this. I was in front of a doctor, and he looked at it. Pretty happy with the results of the x-ray. He showed it to me. I could see my lungs, that they were working pretty well, apparently. So he stitched me up and left me on my merry way.
All right. So there's a lot to address here.
Sure.
First of all, you had what you referred to as a panic attack, which is quite serious. And one of the first times we've actually discussed something serious on this show, apart from the whole cancer thing.
It might be an exaggeration calling it a panic attack. I don't really know, but I couldn't calm down, that's for sure.
You couldn't calm down and you were curled up like a ball on the floor, unless that was like a branding thing for our show. I'd call that unusual behavior, not bad behavior, because it's a reaction to your situation. And I'm very glad that you address it here to the people so they know that you're not superhuman.
I definitely didn't feel superhuman then, that's for sure.
But I'm very glad that you either through my jokes or your nurse friends' calmness or your own ability were able to calm back down. And also the whole thing, in case somebody has forgotten, this was the hole that was made to do the biopsy on your new tumor in your lung, right?
Exactly, and then the actual scar is probably about 2 inches wide, but especially for the last couple of days in the hospital, I had a drain in it, a tube sucking out the excess fluid and air. And so that hole, sort of the middle of the scar, was bigger because it was open for 3 or 4 days or something.
First of all, have you gotten a response for the biopsy yet?
Not really quite yet, exactly.
Okay.
I'm supposed to go see the hospital to speak to them in person about it. The problem is that I was already in another hospital, so I couldn't go. But as soon as I leave here, I'll get the news.
So the hole you keep referring to, is that something you're just going to have to, repatch the wound until it heals? Or are they going to shove more shit in there?
Well, basically it's going to heal. It's done a pretty good job. That extra stitch helped, of course. And being in the hospital for a week, at least they get to change the dressing every day for me, put little, I don't know if they're called this in English, steri-strips, little sterile strips to hold the 2 edges together so it heals faster. And nothing's come out of it for like a week now.
Is the skin so tight that if you do like that, you can potentially rip it?
No.
If you were skinnier, no offense, then that could be a problem. But luckily, those cheeseburgers have paid off.
Yeah, cheeseburgers, as we said, it helped with the chemo, it helped with this. It's really the cure to cancer, maybe, is the big C's burger.
That means we're up to, you survived that, you got into the hospital, they patched up your wound. Then why are you in a hospital now?
Well, because, then they let me leave, and I was fine for a couple of days. And then last Friday, I had a little bit of a fever. It wasn't much, it was like 37.8, 37.9, but I could feel I had a fever. And so again, I got in touch with my nurse friends and doctor friend and said, what do you think? Is this serious? Should I go to the emergency room or not? And they said, well, why don't you take basically Tylenol and see if that brings the fever down. If it does, it's probably not an infection, because usually the infection is stronger than the Tylenol.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took it. My temperature went down. I felt fine. Friday night, and I was at my parents' house again, but they were away for the weekend. Had a perfectly fine night Friday. Then Saturday afternoon, temperature started coming up a bit again. Took a Tylenol, it went down, but it came back again, and at 6 o'clock I had like 38-degree fever. So the opposite of the Tylenol helping. So now I was getting pretty worried. feeling pretty shitty. Not really wanting to go to a hospital or whatever, because I was at my parents' place, which was like 5 miles from here, for 7 or 8 kilometers. And I don't have a car, I don't even have a license. And so I hummed and hawed for a while. And then I said, well, it's really not going down. I guess I'd better. As I've often said in this show, I listen to what the doctors say. And they've always said, if you get a fever that won't go down, call us. It could be an infection. And obviously in my weakened state, an infection isn't great.
And this was a Saturday night?
This is a Saturday evening, yeah. This is like 7:30, 8 o'clock by now. So I called the hospital. So
to repeat your joke.
I had a Saturday night fever, indeed. How did I forget to say that myself? So then I ended up calling the hospital, who put me in touch with the on-call oncologist, who I guess you could just call the oncologist. I don't know.
Nice.
Something like that. And I spoke to her for about 10 minutes. She had access to my files, so she could really look at all the latest data. And she wasn't really too worried. She said there was a lot of things that were reassuring. But seeing as we're in the middle of a pandemic, seeing as I have cancer, she said, I would suggest you do go down to the emergency room. She said, you're probably going to hate me because they're probably going to send you back after waiting there for 5 hours or spending 5 hours there. But she said, yeah, I think you really should. So I called a taxi, got down to the hospital. And lucky for me, the oncologist called the emergency room and told them I was coming. So I got to sort of use the cancer card when I walked in. It was like a half-full emergency room. I walked in. They said, right this way, Mr. Barnes. And everybody in the waiting room sort of looked at me with eyes like daggers, like, why the hell is this guy being treated before me? He just got here. Uh-huh. So then the intake nurse took my temperature, and I explained why I was here because I had a fever. He said, no, you don't. And I was like, I did before, I promise you.
So it had gotten down?
It had gone down at this point to 37 and a half or something. So anyway, they put me in a little sort of cubicle with a bed, and various nurses and doctors came by to do checkups. They gave me, obviously, a COVID test. They gave me a blood test, urine test, blood pressure, everything you can think of. But these tests take a little while to get results. So I ended up spending about 5 hours in that hospital bed. I was happy. After about 4.5, I figured out how to get Wi-Fi in that room. So the last half hour went by much quicker. And then this is like 1:32 in the morning, the doctor came back and said, I'm really sorry, we're going to have to keep you because I had, this is what the x-ray showed, a pleural effusion.
What does that mean?
Which means basically fluid, around the lung, not in the lung, but inside the pleural membrane, which is the membrane sort of inside your chest around the lungs. And there was liquid in there that they obviously have to get out. They figured the infection is probably coming from there, and that's what's probably causing the fever. So they decided immediately they had to give me antibiotics, but by IV. So I couldn't go home and just swallow pills. So by this thing you can see too, catheter in my arm. It was actually in the other arm at that point, so then they said, well, we'll put you up on the 4th floor because apparently you know people up there. Which was the case. It's the same floor I spent a week on last year when I started the chemo. And I was greeted by the very same nurse who greeted me that time. A great guy, who was a funny guy. It was nice to see a sort of friendly face. And they wheeled me into a room, which must have been really nice for the man lying in the other bed, probably thinking he had a nice room for himself for the night. Well, no.
Was this Darth Vader?
Exactly. Fun fact, indeed. My neighbor, I think, might have been Darth Vader. I never actually saw him. Spent a day and a half with him, but he was behind a curtain, and all I could hear was... So he had some kind of respirator on. But surprisingly, the nurses would come and would talk with him and laugh, and it was like a conversation on the phone where you only hear one side. I didn't get it. They were reacting to him as if he was answering. I couldn't hear a word he said.
Maybe he had a lightsaber and made sign language.
Maybe it was that. You're right. Or I guess you could maybe can you not with the Force, like force thoughts into people's head?
Yeah.
Maybe? So that's probably what he did.
Okay.
And so then I stayed with him for I think a day and a half it ended up being. Every 8 hours I had to get these antibiotics. So it's like wake you up at 8 in the morning, right after breakfast, hook you up, do it at 4. Then if you end up falling asleep before midnight, they wake you up at midnight to hook it up again for half an hour. And on my second night here, at 2 in the morning, they woke me up and told me they had to I had to change rooms because they were going to do some loud treatment to him. I don't know what that means, and I hope it went well for him. And
Okay.
it wasn't like a rendezvous with the Death Star or something.
There's so many jokes here. I don't even know where to start. Carry on.
But what had the nice advantage is that at 2 in the morning, they put me in a different room by myself.
Okay.
Actually, the exact same room that I did my first round of chemo in. The antibiotics were helping, and various drugs they were giving me, so my temperature went down. It was a lot easier to sleep, and I don't know if anybody spent time in a hospital room. You mostly would rather be alone than be with somebody, no matter how friendly or nice they are, just because you can sort of go about things yourself. If you're awake at 4 in the morning, you can turn on the light and read a book for a minute or something.
Yeah.
And so I stayed for about a day, I guess. Well, for the next night. No, I had that night, and at the end of the next day, actually, they brought me a new neighbor. So they brought me a new neighbor who spoke, not much. The first day, the only thing he said was after about 3 hours, he turned to me and said, "What a life we live, isn't it?" I was like, yeah. So he wasn't necessarily hugely all smiles, but he did turn out to be kind of funny in that grumpy kind of way, you know?
So that was the Obi-Wan Kenobi character? Or
No,
was it Yoda?
Maybe Yoda, or even, Emperor Palpatine, maybe.
Was
by
he
the look of
green
his-
in the face from his illness?
No, very grey. That's why I'm thinking more of an old Palpatine, maybe.
Ah, okay. We need to read up on our Star Wars references if we carry on into this galaxy. But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I haven't even seen all the movies.
You haven't missed much.
I'm sure I haven't. Sorry, fans.
Oh.
But so then I had a couple of days with him next to me of just sort of normal hospital life, or as normal as it can be, getting your 3 meals a day brought in slightly earlier than you'd like. But lots of great staff again. And I think I was a hit with the staff because I've showed pretty much now everybody in the hospital has seen my balls.
Starballs, Episode 2.
You could have gone with Spaceballs, dude.
I blame the COVID.
Blame it on the COVID. But so yeah, so I had a couple,
Anyway, carry on.
so a couple of days of just sort of lazing around. The food is pretty good here, which isn't what you necessarily expect from hospitals, but I had like duck the first day.
What?
Yeah.
What kind of hospital serves duck?
Well, there's a lake right next door, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Ah.
But by the way, just to explain to people who haven't watched everything, when I say I showed my balls, it's my balls that are in a box. My fake balls that I got for Christmas.
Yeah, your ball and chain.
Exactly. I actually told one of the nurses who was about to leave after taking my vitals, I was like, "Hey, do you want to see my balls?" And she looked at me strangely, and I was like, No, don't worry, they're in a box.
That doesn't make it better.
No, but then she she got a good laugh out of it and immediately told me, "You have to show the doctor this tomorrow. He's going to love it." Which turned out to be true. But so by now I'm feeling pretty good. And they decide they want to get rid of some of, and especially analyze this fluid in my pleural cavity, or that might not be quite the right term, but around my lungs. And so how do you do that? Well, you stick a giant needle in someone's back.
Yes.
Aim for the right place with luckily they do it under with an ultrasound, and then you just take it out.
This is the syringe I referred to as looking as a teenage elephant's penis, right?
That's exactly what you called it. Yeah, it was pretty big. But mind you, I was happy they had the ultrasound to help with it, because my aunt, who was a nurse for a long time,
Aunt Nursey, yeah.
told me about how in her day, or at the beginning of her career, when you had to do this, you'd sort of knock on the person's chest to find out when you're at the right spot and be like, "Hey, let's go in here."
Like the hollow cavity kind of sound?
I guess. I didn't get the exact explanation of what the sound you're looking for, but something like that.
Is there a new Star Wars character in your room now, considering there's sounds in the background?
No, I have the balcony behind me, and my next door neighbor gets wheeled out every once in a while by the nurses so he can smoke a cigarette.
That sounds healthy. All right, so we're up to what point in
Well,
this?
the point of the needle.
The point of the needle, yes. And they stabbed you in the spine, you said?
Not the spine, sort of the right side of my back, I guess the other side of this, basically. And so I was wheeled down to the radiology ward, and a really nice Greek doctor took care of me with 2 assistants. And they said they use local anesthetic, obviously. And then they said, well, we're going to put this needle in. We won't take out more than a liter. I was like, ew. I was expecting it to be a lot less than that. And so they put this needle in, and I was expecting it, as I guess most people would expect it to be, not very enjoyable. And I mean, it wasn't enjoyable, but I literally felt no pain.
Remember when this show was about jokes and not about how many different kinds of disgusting liquids are inside your body?
Disgusting liquids are funny, though.
This is true. I have to know, why did you refer... I know he was Greek, but why was it important to mention that he was Greek?
Well, he wasn't a he. I said doctor. You just assumed it would be a
All right,
man.
She. Why was it important that she was Greek?
Well, I don't think it was important. I just...
How do you know that she was Greek?
Because...
Was she broke?
Well, okay, the reason I know she was Greek is actually because on the cupboard in front of me, there was a whole bunch of cupboards with labels with what was in them, like syringes, this and that. And one of the labels said beans.
Beans?
Beans, like B-E-A-N-E-N-S. And I was like, why do you have a cupboard full of beans? This is still during the procedure. And she explained, no, it's not beans. It's these cardboard little containers they use for something, which are shaped like kidney beans. And she said, no, that's what they are. In Greek, we call those kidneys. I wonder why they call them beans in French. And I said, oh, that's funny. We have kidney beans in English, so it would be both of them, sort of. But so that's how I know she was Greek.
Did anyone at any time say the sentence, this is all Greek to me?
No. I'll think about that because I'm going to be seeing her again tomorrow.
She's probably never heard that joke. I don't think ever any Greek person has ever heard that stupid sentence.
Or maybe they use it when they've just understood everything.
Yes, precisely.
So how did that go? It's all Greek to me. I'm good.
I actually have a Greek name. Andreas is Greek, but it's still Greek to me. So anyway, carry on. You were stabbed in the back. You felt nothing. They drained you of juice.
Yeah, they drained 550 milliliters.
So half a liter.
Yeah, basically a large beer. I thought it was funny. She congratulated me at the end. She was like, "Oh, Mr. Burns, congratulations that you were so brave." And I was like, "Well, it's not brave if it doesn't hurt. It's just easy." She was like, "Well, we do the same thing to everybody, and some people do scream."
But yes, you have been stabbed quite a few times.
Yeah, I've been stabbed and jabbed, I don't know, a couple of 100 times probably since last June.
Yeah, you're like a medieval 50 Cent.
Exactly. But that evening, my temperature started going up again. So then they started getting a little worried again. Like, you probably have another infection on top of the first one, which was fun to hear. So to take care of that, they immediately took out the catheter so they could analyze that, because that was probably the most likely place an infection can come from. Obviously, every time something gets stuck in you, you can get an infection, which is why you should always wear a condom. And so they did that. Then they took lots of blood to test it with different things. And it looked like these little airline bottles of alcohol. That they took blood and mixed it into for those that they can test for, I don't exactly know what, but different kinds of infection to hopefully narrow down what kind of antibiotic I need. And the next day I still had sort of the fever going up and down, feeling kind of crummy. I wake up Friday morning feeling a little better already. And the nurse comes in and sees my neighbor lying 2 meters from me and said, "Hello, sir. Bad news. You have COVID."
She said it out loud as well?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Said it to him immediately. Said, you tested negative, or positive, rather. And so that wasn't, I didn't like hearing that.
And he had been coughing into the atmosphere of the room for...
Breathing, at least. He wasn't particularly coughing, I must say, but breathing in any case in the room. He was 2 meters from me. Luckily, even in my room, I continued, which probably helped at least, I continued disinfecting my hands every time I got up from my bed and would go to the bathroom. Every time I came out of the bathroom, as I've been for the past 2 years, I continued being very careful. But I was a bit worried, and for 2 hours I lay there next to him. They had us put our masks back on, and I was like, it's not that I don't like him, but I hope they get rid of him soon.
And then he died, right?
Hopefully not, because then they wheeled him away, and I haven't seen him since.
Ah,
They wheeled him to the COVID ward.
crematorium.
And so I'm in my room by myself. The doctors came by again, and they were apologizing profusely. Like, we're really sorry if you got COVID here. We do everything, and I know they do everything they can to avoid it. I know it's not 100% avoidable in a hospital, sadly. It was bad luck. I'm not mad at the hospital. But the doctor rather, did tell me that she kind of hoped I had COVID.
Because that would explain your weird symptoms.
No, because she didn't like me. No, yeah, the symptom thing. She said it would explain my fever better, and it's better than an infection, especially that I'm triple vaxxed. And so they came and gave me a COVID test, and this was lots of fun. She came in and said, well, we're going to test you now. And she had an assistant with her. And then I realized that the assistant was learning to do COVID tests, and that she was going to learn on me. So you've had one, recently even. They stick that thing up into like the back regions of your brain, it feels like.
Yes, it's very comfortable.
Usually it lasts about 10 seconds. This, I'm pretty sure, was about an hour and a half it was in there. No, but like 25 seconds, and I was gripping my table thinking, well, I mean, she has to learn somehow. Then she pulls it out and drops it on the floor by mistake.
Yeah.
Rendering it useless, of course.
That is quite horrific.
Yeah, I wasn't thrilled, but the doctor said, oh, really sorry, I'll do it this time. Did it in the other nostril, and it literally lasted 4 seconds. She had obviously done it quite a few times and was good at it.
When you told me this, my immediate reaction was, when did they start using cancerous needle cushions as crash test dummies for COVID tests for moronic young students?
Well, yeah, you're, I guess, kind of right.
I'm exactly right.
Yeah, I didn't mind too much. I understand the need to do, but you're right that there are like 500 asymptomatic people a day that probably come by. They could test it on them.
She could have practiced on a peeled banana. Just make a little hole, shove it up there.
Which people can also use if they don't know quite how to put on condoms, by the way.
Are you being paid by like the what's it called? Birth Control Society of Switzerland?
Yeah, no, yeah. But it's sort of hidden in this episode, and it came out suddenly like some kind of Trojan horse.
Can we just steer off for a second? And I'm just asking you in case you know, and it has nothing to do with either your health condition or my health condition. But Switzerland is apparently quite known for offering assisted, what's it called? Assisted suicide?
Yeah.
And it costs a bit, like you have to pay for it. And apparently people can come from other countries to Switzerland to end it all. Do you know anything about the process of how difficult that is to do? If it was me, for instance, I'm not going to do it. I'm just curious.
You have to really be ill. I mean, like life-threatening ill, and sort of, I'm pretty sure, speak with psychologists and speak with doctors beforehand to really see that your living conditions are so bad that they say, well, okay, it's your choice. We'll help you feel better.
Okay.
I guess. So, but I'm not thinking about doing that yet.
No, of course. I'm just wondering, because a lot of people have, in random conversations, regardless of this, referred to Switzerland recently as the place you go to get assisted suicide. And I was like wondering, do Swiss people sort of talk about that as, hey, that's a perk we have?
Well, I mean, it's a humane thing to do, I think. And as most things in Switzerland, it was voted on by the people of Switzerland. So people agree with it. In any case, I don't think anybody thinks it's fun.
Isn't that kind of ironic? Because I've received a lot of jokes over the years from you and everyone else that I am from Scandinavia and the suicide rate in Scandinavia is quite high for, darkness half of the year and all that stuff. But if the Swiss people voted to kill themselves legally, what does that say about Swiss people?
I mean, I don't know how often it happens, but I would imagine...
Once. You only need once.
Yeah, not per person, just in general. I would imagine it's a pretty low number for the amount of times it happens a year.
Okay.
We can look into it maybe for the next episode.
Anywho, back to your being stabbed on a regular basis.
The fact that I have to stay isolated means I have this whole room to myself. And it's funny now, in the room, though, they had to add stickers on the door, and every nurse who comes in has to put on coverings on top of their normal clothes that then they throw out every time they leave the room. It's kind of like being an outbreak with Dustin Hoffman or something, to make another really on-point reference that most people won't remember.
A film about something monkey-related disease from 1995?
Well, yeah, I know you know what it is. You can probably quote it.
That was a direct quote from Outbreak.
But so now I've had a pretty decent weekend because they don't bother you much on the weekend here. The doctors only come by if they're needed rather than the everyday rounds they do during the week. So I just had my meals and that's been about it. Hung out a lot. The only sort of symptom I still have is that these past 3 nights, I'll go to sleep at like 11 and I wake up at 3:30 in the morning in a puddle of sweat.
Shouldn't you be like lying in some sort of interactive waterbed?
That might be good. I'm trying to change my bed into a waterbed.
You know, people take like ice bathing, and when women give birth, it's suggested that you should do it in water. Maybe you should just like lie in a lukewarm pool at all times and you'll get healthy as an ox within minutes.
That's a good plan.
And then you can sweat as much as you want because it cleanses you of all that stuff.
Speaking of bubbles, I forgot to show you. I received this hookah from my doctors, from a physiotherapist actually. A bottle of water and a tube, and it's to get my lungs stronger. I've got a...
Oh, really? That's not a joke. You're actually...
Not a joke. I have to do this a couple of times a day, sort of blow when the water adds resistance, blow and empty out the lungs, and I've got a couple of other breathing exercises to do.
Does this feel cathartic considering every child in the world has been yelled at when blowing bubbles from a straw as a kid? Stop doing that!
A little bit, yeah, absolutely.
It's a circle of life.
Thanks, Elton.
We don't have the copyrights for me to start singing. Sawenya!
Absolutely, don't sing it, whatever you do. And so yeah, today I'm just gonna...
We arrived on the planet. Sorry.
But tomorrow a new adventure starts because they're gonna make another hole in me.
This time between the eyes, or?
No, they're gonna... Remember that I told you about, I had the drain sucking out the juice in the air after the last operation?
They want some sort of equilibrium on the other side?
Maybe. Well, they took out 550 milliliters of fluid from around my lungs, but that wasn't all the fluid. That was sort of all the fluid in one pocket. Uh-huh. And the thing is, so they could try and take out the rest of it with another needle, but it would probably take a few. And each time you do that, there's extra risks of a lung collapse, an infection, lots of other fun stuff. So they decided that tomorrow they're putting a new drain in me.
So this will be Dr. Helen of Troy who will stab you with a spear, right?
It is going to be the same doctor doing it, actually, which I was very happy to learn because I thought she did such a great job that I will have zero apprehension before doing this one.
All right, so Joe, do you have any idea how long you're going to stay in the hospital? Do you have any idea when you're going to leave? Do you have any idea what's going to happen after that? And do you remember all these questions in a row? Go.
Okay, probably somewhere around Tuesday or Wednesday. The thing is, I probably won't be staying home for that long because I spoke to my oncologist and he'd like me to have that operation that was canceled at the beginning of the year, the abdominal one where they pull out my intestines.
So he not the back one, the...
Yeah, the back one, but they go in through the front, remember?
Yeah, so the big one.
The big one. He'd like that to happen by mid-February, so that's like 2 weeks from tomorrow or something. So probably, if my health permits it, I'll be back in the hospital in Bern in a couple of weeks. And then if all goes well, I'll have a month or so to get over that. And then they want to finish treating the lungs. They already know that they're going to have to do something. It could be radiotherapy, chemo, another operation, a combination of 2 or 3 of those. So it's as my doctor said, it's not an exact science where they can say, this is what we're doing. It's slightly different for every patient. And so it'll be talked over with all the experts, and that's it.
Well, this was a hoot of an episode.
Possibly. So yeah, let's put an end to the
misery.
Remember, everybody, please like, subscribe, tell people about the show if you like it, and if you've watched this far, thanks a lot for that because it was a long episode, I think.
It was. Thank you very much to the ones who shared previously. Keep up the good sharing, because sharing is
caring.
This is true. Until we meet again, Joe.
Yeah, and wear masks also.
Yes. That's always a winner.
Cool.
Until we meet again, Joe.
Absolutely. Pretty soon. See ya.